The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game of all time, and it is in my top 10 games of all time. So naturally, I was excited when Nintendo revealed that they were bringing Majora's Mask to the 3DS. So, around midnight of the 12th, I jumped in my car and headed to my local GameStop to pick up my copy of the game. And I, like so many others, had to settle for the standard edition thanks to Nintendo making the limited edition too limited and eBay scalpers continuing to be the scum of the earth. But I digress. That is a rant for another time. Regardless of my frustration at not having a Skull Kid figurine, I am very pleased with my purchase. Griezo went all out on this one, trying to take the game that so many people love and hammering out some of its more rough edges. And for the most part, they've done really well with this, and in other ways, not quite as much. A lot of the changes have been to streamline it and make it more accessible to new players as well as players on the go, considering it's a handheld game now. But some of these changes, they make the game too easy, almost to the point of it seeming broken at times. For example, the first boss in the game, Ottawa, has been made so easy that many people, myself included, have said the proper way to defeat him feels like cheating, especially when you compare it to how you had to take him down in the original version. And they also changed the ice arrows in a way that really feels like they're just holding the player's hand. Back in the original version, the ice arrows affected various things, and you had to figure out for yourself what it affected. The obvious thing was water, freezing it to create platforms to cross, but it would also affect certain choo-choos as well as Octorocks. However, now, everything that the ice arrows affect shimmer with an obvious icy look to them, and the only spots you can freeze on the water are those shimmery spots. Essentially, there is no thought that goes into when and where to use the ice arrows anymore. It's just shoot whatever shimmers. On top of that, they've also made a few changes that just feel pointless, such as moving the bank from West Clock Town to right behind Clock Tower. For the life of me, I genuinely cannot figure out why they made that change. The masks themselves have had very few changes from the original version to the 3DS version, most of them being cosmetic. For example, the Deku mask now turns its hat into some kind of a thorny vine anytime you attack. And the Goron mask actually changes parts of its body to stone depending on the action you are performing. The biggest change to the masks, however, is the Zora mask. Swimming while using the Zora mask is completely different. In the original game, you were able to swim at high speeds through the water by holding down the A button, but on the 3DS, that has been changed to a slower, more deliberate pace. That change is really nice when trying to navigate through tight corridors, but it's problematic when trying to cross large areas of water. Fear not, though, because the high-speed swim is still possible. However, it uses magic along with the magic field that Zora Link produces when you press down the R button. This does several things. For one, it makes green potions more valuable while you're in the Great Bay, considering that you use magic any time you want to swim faster than Link's usual leisurely speed. To me, that is really nice considering how worthless consumables usually are in Zelda titles. However, this does add a significant annoyance when you want to swim fast but you've used up all your magic. It's kind of a double-edged sword in the end, and I've heard more than one complaint about it. As for me, though, the ability to swim at a slower pace and not constantly ram into walls when I'm in narrow areas is worth having to carry an extra green potion or two with me. The only other really big change in the game is the bosses, and in all honesty, I'm not sure how I feel about the change. First of all, I'm tired of all the Zelda bosses having giant eyes for weak spots. And that's really more of a problem for modern Zelda, as nothing before Wind Waker really had a lot of bosses like that. But in just the last couple of games, we've had so many bosses that were defeated by attacking a giant eye that it's become seen as one of the most overused tropes in the entire Zelda series. And that's all despite the fact that there really hasn't been that many bosses that you defeat like that when you take the series as a whole. That said, however, the changes, for better or for worse, that the addition of these eyes has made is undeniable and has to be mentioned. As I said before, I think the fight against Ottawa is broken now. Using the Deku mask against him turns a once hectic fight into a simple slaughter. Ottawa doesn't even attack you when you're in the air, and you can easily get through this fight without even taking any damage whatsoever. Hell, you can probably get through the fight without Ottawa even swinging his sword at you. He'll just stare up at you with that dumb expression on his face as you ruthlessly butcher him. Goat, or Goot, or whatever the hell you want to call him, on the other hand, manages to maintain the speed and intensity of the original battle. The only difference is that when you knock him down, you have to take off the Goron mask and unleash several arrows into the giant eye on his back until it bursts like the comically oversized balloon that it is. From here on out, though, the bosses change significantly. And it's probably in response to the fact that, well, let's face it, these other two bosses are not very well liked among the community. For example, Gyorg is my least favorite boss in Majora's Mask, and probably one of my least favorite in the franchise as a whole. It is simply boring and repetitive. However, Majora's Mask 3D changes that by changing the majority of the fight. The fight is split into two parts, and the first part of the battle is more or less like the battle we all remember from the N64 days. However, it added a second part that is an outright underwater showdown with the giant fish, and it is fantastic. It's a well needed update to a universally despised boss. The last of the dungeon bosses, Twin Mold, was another fight that I and many others did not care for in the original Majora's Mask. It was really cool having to fight such a gargantuan boss and having a mask that could allow me to match that size. However, once Link dons the Giant's mask, things just become standard hack at it with your sword until it's dead fight. This is not the case with the 3DS version, not at all. As with Gyorg, this battle is split into two parts. However, neither part is like the N64 version at all. A big reason for that is that when you walk into Twin Mold's chamber, you don't have the giant mask. You get it for defeating one of the worms. This makes the first part of the match much more intense, as you are just a child facing off against two giant monsters. And once you finish off the first one, you take the mask and are given a sense of extreme empowerment as you wail on the second worm until you finally bring it down. The aspect of having to fight at such a disadvantage in the beginning and then gaining the ability to go toe to toe with a giant creature by the end is something that the original fight sorely lacked. Besides those, there aren't altogether too many changes to this game. In the end, it's still Majora's Mask, the incredible game that came out on the N64. It holds true to everything the game was about, and the changes were mostly cosmetic. In my opinion, it rectifies several issues the original game had due to its short dev cycle. The controls have been ironed out, the boss fights have been mostly improved, and the whole world just seems to be presented in a neater package. But at the end of the day, love it or hate it, it's still Majora's Mask. And in the end, when it comes to a remake like this, that's all that really matters.